So, hello and welcome. How is everybody doing? This is such a, I want to say, unusual time in the history of the world. This is a time that people will remember for many years to come, maybe for generations to come. We'll be talking to our grandkids about, what it was like to live through the coronavirus. And I think we're learning a lot about what matters to us. We're learning a lot about what isn't working for us individually and collectively. And I think people are going to start making some different decisions. So one of the things that I wanted to share with you today is the brand new podcast. So I just launched the Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life podcast. You can get it on Spotify, Apple, iTunes, and a bunch of other places. If you go to anchor.fm/Nadia Delacruz, you can link to all the different distribution platforms there. And that's really a podcast that's tailor-made for all of you. I've been running this group for almost 5 years, and it's grown so much in the last year. Thank you, Elsa. And I wanted to come up with other ways that we can communicate, that we can connect, that we can discuss things. So this is what felt right in this moment. It's something I'd considered for a while, and here it is. I launched a podcast. So here I'm going to be talking about some of his books, some of the themes of Wayne Dyer's writing, experiences of his life, stories that he told us, spiritual concepts, many of which I learned initially through him. We want to talk about some of his influences, and I also want to talk to all of you. So there are so many people in this group who either knew Dr. Dyer or have their own stories about how his teachings touched their lives. So I will be inviting members of the Wayne Dyer Wisdom Community to come and be a guest on the podcast, and I'm really looking forward to that. I think that's my favorite thing, is when we can connect together. So my name is Nadia Delacruz. I am the founder of the Wayne Dyer Wisdom Community. My website, where you can also find me, is angeltarot.org. And I started this group a few days after Wayne Dyer passed away. His death came as a real shock and heartbreak to me because he was such a guiding light in my life. I discovered him as a teenager, and he was on PBS, and he's talking about, I don't know which special it was, but he's talking about what we're capable of. He's talking about the potential of human beings. And there was something about him that opened my mind. It opened my heart, and I started to see the possibilities of what life could be. And I started reading his books, and I never stopped. I had the blessed opportunity to see him a few times live, including visiting with his first conference in Hawaii, where he was living in Maui, in Ka'anapali. And that was just, one of the best things I ever did, was going to Maui to see Wayne Dyer. And I talk about that in the first episode of the podcast. So if you want to hear more about that, my story of swimming with Wayne in the ocean, which is amazing. I'm so glad I did that. Check out the podcast. And if you need the link, I put it in the announcements for the group. So if you're joining me here, you're probably a member of the Wayne Dyer Wisdom Community. And if you're not, everyone is welcome to join. This is an open group. So let's talk a little bit about the life of Wayne Dyer. He was born on May 10th, 1940 in Detroit. And he was the youngest of 3 boys. And his father was an alcoholic. Didn't make life easy for them. And he abandoned the family. He left them, left his mother with 3 young boys that she didn't have the means to provide for. So Wayne and his brother David ended up going into an orphanage and into a series of foster homes. So he didn't have an easy start. He wasn't born with a silver spoon. He overcame what could have been seen as many, many obstacles, but he chose to look at those experiences in his life as character forming, as things that helped him become the man that he came here wanting to be. He said that his mission in life, his purpose in life, was to teach self-reliance. He wanted to teach us how to be independent of the good opinion of other people. He wanted to teach us how to think for ourselves, follow the beat of our own drum, not be afraid to do things differently. And he studied humanistic psychology at Wayne State University, where he got his doctorate. And that was really foundational for a lot of these ideas that he ended up sharing with us throughout the rest of his life. So he studied from Abraham Maslow, who talked about self-actualizing people, which is people who must be what they can be. It's like this fulfillment of your potential. And when Maslow taught that to the academic community, he was speaking of it in terms of there's only a few people that can get there. It's this really, peak level of spiritual, psychological, mental, emotional achievement, right? That you're living in this state of bliss where everything is working well and like nothing's bothering you. And when Wayne heard that, he said, that's not just for a select few. If one person can do it, then I can do it, and you can do it, and everybody can do it. That was the driving force of his life. He just had something in him that he believed that we could change the way we think and not have to suffer anymore. That we're not a victim to our stories. We're not a victim to our past. We're not a victim to circumstances and experiences in our life. That we have so much power over how we feel and what we do and where our lives go. So he started in psychology and he made this shift into spirituality in the 1990s, which is when I discovered him. And he talks about God, he talks about this oneness in all of us, and he talks about the co-creative process and the law of attraction. One of his favorite topics or lessons for me is the art of manifesting. That if you can conceive it in your mind, and if you can connect to the feeling of the wish fulfilled, that you can bring it into form. And you can make that a part of your reality. He's such an inspiration in my own life. And so when he passed away, I started this group. I didn't know where it was going to go. I didn't know how I was going to find people, but I was so sad that he was gone, and I was on the Hay House Memorial site, and I was finding people that felt about Wayne the way that I felt about Wayne. And I didn't know people like that in my own life. I guess I was the odd one out. I was interested in the self-help books and spirituality and, anything from Wayne Dyer. I just, gobbled it up. And I didn't really have anybody to talk to about that. And I didn't know anybody who felt the same way. And when I was grieving his passing, that's something that's really hard to explain to someone who's not already a fan of Wayne Dyer, or who hadn't been impacted by his teachings, or just really wasn't interested in changing the way they think about things. So I met people there who shared in that grieving process and shared their own stories, and I think that's part of what inspired me to do this. So a few days after he died, I created this Facebook group, and it's just a few people at first, and this year, it's grown to over 50,000 members. That is mind-blowing, and I don't take credit for that. That's all Wayne. He touched so many people, and his work helped so many lives, and people still want that. People are still hungry for that. And when we're going through something like this, where our world is turned upside down and there's so much uncertainty and it's so easy to fall into fear and we don't know what we're doing or where this is going to go, We need to find our center more than ever. We need to connect to the inner light, because that's the only footing we have. That's the only place we can stand, is that inner Tahiti. It's that center of the storm, to learn to connect to the source within you and live from there. You know, if we're living in ego terms, where we identify with what we do for work, or how other people see us, or what our material possessions are, then when those things fall away, we lose our sense of self. Isn't that what's happening to a lot of people right now? They're losing their jobs. They're not sure who they are, you know. And what would Wayne say? What would Wayne say at this time? And he would tell us that everything that we need comes from within, that we already have all of it, that we can change the way we look at this. We don't have to look at this as a catastrophe. We don't need to call it a crisis. This is just something that's happening to change things around. It's moving the pieces around. And as Dr. Dyer would say, there's something bigger moving the pieces around. There is a divine force in the universe, an intelligent energy in the universe, in all things. There is no place where God is not. He's in every piece of this. We don't know what's happening, and that makes us scared. We're seeing really sad things on the news from our friends and family. We want everybody to be safe. We want everybody to be well. We want to make sure that we can take care of our families. And I think it's important to be really, really flexible right now. Be willing to see yourself differently. Be willing to reinvent your life, and what a blessing that is. You know, when he was in the orphanage and kids would come in and they'd be crying and they'd be upset, of course, that's the normal reaction, right? And Wayne would come up to these kids and he'd be like, hey, what are you crying? Like, this is going to be awesome. There's no parents here. We're going to have so much fun, right? There's always another way of looking at things. And when people would lose their jobs and they'd get laid off and they're talking about the financial crisis, he'd say, you know, everything that happens is for your benefit. You just got freed from a job that wasn't right for you. You just got a whole bunch of new doors open for where you could go. This time in the world is so ripe with potential and possibility. Yes, we can look at the deaths. Yes, we can look at the struggling economy. Yes, we can look at suffering. Or we can choose to look at the other side of that, which is also there. The sun is always shining behind the clouds. We can look at how we can change our lives. We can look at how we can use this opportunity to change the world, to change our political system, to change the way government functions, to change where we shop, to change what our priorities are, to get more in alignment with what our true priorities are, instead of running on autopilot. You know, autopilot is not serving anybody. And I think we get so busy with the running around of our lives. So many of us don't remember to stop and think about what matters, what's important, what do we really want? Does your life reflect what's most important to you? Are you putting your precious time, the limited hours you have in this life, are you putting it on things that don't matter to you? And how can you change that? Ken says it's time to listen to the guidance from within during meditation. Yes, 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 yes. Meditation, meditation. That brings us into direct contact with God. I have a couple of guided meditations from Wayne Dyer that I've had forever that I still enjoy. My favorite is probably his Meditations for Manifesting. And he does this awe meditation in the morning and this Om meditation at night. You know, it's just about 20 minutes. And I think we've got time for that. It's about making time for that. And it can realign your whole energy and change the way that you see things. So I think particularly if you can, when you wake up in the morning, start a meditation process, get into the habit of that so that you can connect. I think that's really what I wanted to tell you today about Wayne. I've been doing a lot of research into his life. I'm no stranger to his stories. I'm not new to his books. I've been reading this for over 20 years, but I've been diving into the story of his life and what his influences were, what the changing, the turning points were for him. Who did he learn from? Who was he inspired by? What were the people that planted these seeds for him? And this is going to be next week's podcast about Wayne Dyer's origin story. It's an hour long, and we talk about his time at Wayne State University and being a professor at St. John's University to writing his first book, Your Erroneous Zones. Some of the people that he studied from, authors that he loved, Emerson, Maslow, St. Francis of Assisi. And that was my attempt to kind of put some of those pieces together about how did Dr. Wayne Dyer become the author and the speaker that we knew and loved, a man who inspired millions and millions of people. And what was unique about him? He was really self-driven. He was willing to go a different route. He was willing to go against the grain. He was willing to follow the dream that only he could see. And he took enormous chances in his life, which is almost hard to believe when you think about it, because he was the father of 8 children. He had a lot of people relying on him. And one of the biggest moves that he made was walking away from his job as a professor to try and sell this book that wasn't selling very well. And it ends up on the bestseller list and sold over 100 million copies to date. That was Your Erroneous Zones. And he wrote over 40 books in his lifetime. Take the path less traveled. He was really outspoken. He was a scholar his whole life. I think that's probably what one of his biggest gifts was. He could read these books that were, very complicated or very dry, and most of us wouldn't know what to do with it. And he could translate that into something that was useful for our lives. And he did it over and over and over again. So thank you, Wayne. Happy birthday. This would have been yesterday would have been your 80th birthday if you were still here with us. And I know in so many ways you still are here with us. And I'm so thankful that we have this group to connect with. And, I think this was a good time to try out a Facebook Live, because we can't get together in person, at least not right now. So it's encouraging us to connect more in ways like this. Now, if anybody has a question about Wayne Dyer or wants to share a story, please jump on in the comments and let me know, and we can talk about that. Otherwise, I just kind of wanted to join with you today and see how everybody's doing, and thank everyone for being a part of the community. Thank you for joining me here. Thank you for keeping his message alive. And I hope that you'll check out the podcast. It's a real passion project for me, and I'm so looking forward to having some of you on as a guest. Yes, Ken says he didn't like to be told no. He was an independent thinker and did not follow the crowd. Absolutely. And if he had followed the crowd, he wouldn't be who we knew him to be. Not everybody loved what he was doing. He was shaking up the status quo a little bit. And a lot of what he needed to do to become the teacher that he was to really put himself out there. And he knew that getting on television was a great way to do that. So he ends up on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson 37 times. He was so proud of that. And he had many PBS specials where he raised millions and millions of dollars for public television. And him putting himself out there and becoming known and getting in the public eye is why we know about him. You know, he could have written the best books ever, but if nobody knows about him, then we're not going to receive that. So that was part of what brought him to us. Valerie's asking if we're going to get people together in the future. You know, I'm totally open to it. I've had a few people ask about if we could do a gathering, and I'm in Seattle, Washington. I know we have members from all over the world. In fact, if you're here tonight, tell me where you're at. But that's, you know, that's something that maybe we can do at a future date. But for online gatherings, yeah, absolutely. Let me know what you think about that. I know a lot of people will probably catch this on the replay, and that's totally fine. If you're interested in more Facebook Lives, then, you know, comment on the post. Comment on this post and let me know, or send me a message. And we could make this a monthly thing. Maybe we have a little time to connect every month and talk about maybe one of his teachings, and then let you guys come on. We could also do a Zoom gathering, something I thought about. That's a little bit harder to gather up because people will have to come to the link on the Zoom call, but then we could share that video in the group, and then we could actually see each other's faces, which is nice, and it's not just me. So yeah, let me know if you'd like to do more Facebook Lives. We can absolutely do that. If you're interested in a Zoom meeting, you know, I can put something into place for that. Patrick says, yes, please. Valerie says, let's do it. I would love to find more ways to connect with all of you. So, you know, this is one of my attempts to say, hello, I'm here, I'm a real person. I'm so thankful to be here with all of you guys, and you know, let's talk about this stuff because it really lights me up. Ken likes the idea of Zoom. I'd like that too. I like that too. So let's chat in the group and let me know what you're interested in. And for all of you who joined me live today, thank you so much for coming today. Celebration of Wayne's birthday and the amazing community that we're growing on Facebook. Love to you all, love to each other. Take care of yourself. Think about what you do want. Focus on what you want to manifest, especially in that 5 minutes before you go to sleep at night, and you'll marinate on that. Love you guys so much. Thanks again. I'll see you soon.